Deputy Karen Wilson, Vice Chair.
Deputy Max Andrews. Could you introduce yourself and the team,
Yes, I'm Ian Gorst, Minister for External Relations. I'm joined by...
Elaine Miller, Assistant Minister for External Relations.
Deputy Mod Scott, Assistant Minister for External Relations.
and at the table we've got...
Helen Delacour, Director of Financial and Professional Services.
And Kate Nutt, Chief Officer of External Relations.
Thank you. And do you want to introduce your subsequent team, or as and when?
Well, as and
when, that's fine, thank you.
When,
yeah, you're all welcome. I'm sorry if there's not enough space for all of you, but we'll call on you. I'm sure the Minister will call on whoever needs to speak at the relevant time. So, Minister, you'll be aware that there's a lot going on internationally at the moment that affects Britain and probably by extension Jersey. I'm sorry if you haven't had sight of all the questions, but there clearly have been some developments over the weekend and what's going on globally. The first question I've got for you is to ask what Jersey's position is and what your position is on the UK Independent International Commission's inquiry that Israel is committing genocide. Do you have any? Do
you mean the UN's, not
the UN's? The UN's
yeah.
The commission. That's right.
Well, of course, the inquiry has made its report, and that report goes to the UN. And I think we all agree that what is currently happening is appalling, and the evidence that the inquiry has produced no doubt will be used in due course for members of the UN to make their decisions. We know there's a Security Council meeting coming in fairly short order. We know that the UK has made its position clear about what it's going to call for there. But we also know, of course, that the UN itself said that the issue of genocide is something which is dealt with by the International Court.
So to ask the question again, do you accept the finding that Israel is committing genocide?
Well, it's not for me to either accept or not accept, nor for anyone else. It is evidence that a body set up, or an inquiry set up by the UN, has now produced its report, and that report, I've got no doubt, will lead to actions on behalf of members of the United Nations. We know that the actions that the UK is already taking. We know the case of South Africa before the International Court, and that inquiry report will be used in those processes.
I'll ask the question again, because I think it is about what Jersey's position. As a Jersey minister, do you accept the findings of the commission that
it's not for
genocide is taking place?
It's not for me or for anyone here to either accept or not. I have no evidence before me upon which to make an assessment other than what is happening is appalling. I support the view that the UK has taken in regard to that, and I think that's... I'm
not sure why Jersey can't accept the finding if it's that, and also presumably
I'm not sure it's not that we... I don't think that we are...
Do you disagree? Do you disagree with the
No, because I don't have... I've not carried out the inquiry. I'm not in a position...
Do you trust the UN?
No. It's an independent inquiry. The UN itself, as you know, has said that the commission was established by the UN Human Rights Council in 2021 to investigate violations of international humanitarian and human rights law, but it does not officially speak for the UN. What happens with these inquiries is that then individual members of the UN take actions arising out of the inquiry, and we know that, as we know, there is a case before the International Court now, and I've got no doubt that that case will take the view of the independent inquiry when it's making its findings.
Minister, it sounds like evasion to me that you don't want to give an answer, but could I ask a subsequent question? Is that the member states and European member states also seem to have taken on board what the Commission has said, that they do accept that Israel is committing genocide and that they've unveiled plans to restrict trade with Israel, to impose sanctions in response to the war. And can you advise if any similar considerations and measures are being considered by Jersey?
Well, we remind ourselves, don't we, that the United Kingdom is the sovereign state. We are a sub-sovereign state. We have made our view clear to the United Kingdom, and we will continue to do so. It is the United Kingdom that will make decisions in regard to the matters that you are questioning me about. I will continue to make the same case that I have made throughout these appalling atrocities, which is that we will support the UK to and agree with the UK's position to see an immediate ceasefire, to see a long-term two-state solution, to see the release of the hostages.
What if we don't agree with the UK's position? What if we have a different position as an assembly?
Well, the Assembly, theoretically, can opine under its standing orders on any matter it wishes, but that doesn't mean to say it falls within its remit to be able to then the decisions about foreign relations, as we know, the decision the UK is responsible as a matter of international law for our foreign relations. So it is ultimately their decision which will make a difference or not in relation to the crisis that is currently unfolding.
Are we abdicating, in a sense, our own responsibility to Big Brother in the UK if we have, can we guarantee that they will also seek to protect us reputationally from actions that we should maybe be taking ourselves in the face of what the Commission has said is a genocide?
Well, legally, they are responsible for our foreign relations. You may not like that situation. That raises other questions for us to deal with. We can communicate to them, as we have done throughout this period. We can communicate with them our view. That's what we have done. But it is their decision, and they are the ones who will make those decisions as the sovereign state.
If I turn to maybe something which Jersey may have more control over, could you, as the Finance Minister, effectively give any guarantees that Jersey's not trading with businesses or receiving financial flows from the occupied territories, which are also not subject to sanctions?
Well, I am not aware that they are, but had you given pre-notice of that question, then of course we could have gone and asked the question of the regulator. But I am, the last time I was advised on such a question, the answer was that we were not aware that that was happening.
And we're also aware that Israel has a very big tech industry that Jersey has sought to do business with in the past. Is there any risk that Jersey could be exposed to dealing with companies complicit in the war, and would that be a problem?
Again, the last time I asked that question, I was advised that that was not the case, but I can ask the question. There is, of course, a more nuanced question about some of technology which has been or may have been developed in Israel, which is more universally used, that may not actually be traceable. But as far as I'm concerned, when I have asked the question, the answer has come back in the negative.
Thank you, Minister. Any questions from...
Yeah, just to follow up on that, could you just explain what Jersey does when there are businesses operating in war-torn zones. How do you protect Jersey's interest on that basis?
Well, that's a slightly different question because it would be, I think, in breach of regulatory standards for Jersey firms to be
I think do things first.
operating directly. Having said that, of course, they may be operating in a jurisdiction and then a war breaks out. They will then have to manage that in the best way that they think best manages the risk to themselves, to their employees. So they would really, I think, we'd take each case on its own merits given the individual attributes of any given situation.
And would you need to take some advice from the UK on that basis?
Well, I don't think we would take advice. I think what would happen is, as an individual seeking to travel into an area of turmoil, one would contact the relevant UK authorities. That's exactly what we would expect Jersey businesses to do who were operating in any such area. Sometimes I think we've helped certainly individuals. We've probably been approached by companies as well who might be doing inward visits, and we would liaise with the Foreign Office and support them in the best way, because the Foreign Office will have the intelligence on the ground.
Thank you.
Minister, do you anticipate that we may see some behavioural change just organically from any parts of the industry? So, for example, we think of the co-op, which brought its own sanctions in to stop some, not sanctions, but boycott certain products. Are we likely to see that in other industries? Do you think changing their behaviour about what countries they might do business with, based on international pressures?
I think that goes really without saying. We see that happening in regard to all sorts of issues, whether there's a wave of opinion on social media, companies make changes to what they sell, to their marketing strategy, to their geography, where they're operating, based on all sorts of things. So, of course, if a company looks at the risk, it also looks at the profit, and it makes changes based on all of those things.
Thank you. If you're happy, we're going to turn to a related question that Deputy Andrews will ask about engagement with EU member states.
Yes, I just wanted to ask you, Minister, about whether any discussions have taken place with any diplomats or politicians from European states, in particular in the last quarter.
What?
Regarding anything more significant.
Just regarding...
So has there been any developments, for instance, with yourself and any particular politicians or diplomats in the European states discussing anything that's significant to Jersey?
Well, we have an ongoing programme of conversations with whether that's UK politicians or diplomats globally or more European based. Of course, we've had a recent visit of the Portuguese ambassador. I attended an event with the French ambassador. I will be attending the party conference events later this month. I attended the Reform Party conference event earlier this month, and there was diplomatic engagement at those events as well. It's not a surprise, just as the chair's been asking questions about the crisis in the Middle East and Ukraine. It won't be a surprise that those conversations include those issues.
And have you been speaking to anybody in particular in the finance industry who want to be connecting maybe more with certain areas of Europe? And if so, what are you doing to try and achieve that?
Well, you know, and you've got a topic area around competitiveness further on the agenda. And there we are talking to industry around how we can support them. And we do this whenever we meet with industry, either industry bodies or individual firms, asking them how we can support their growth agenda. And those conversations have taken place in regard to Europe as well.
Yeah. Also, just touching on, you mentioned about you attending the Reform conference in the UK. Obviously, you do speak to politicians who are currently in the Labour Party. And where do you think we're going as an island in terms of what's currently happening in the UK, and what does that really mean for Jersey?
Well, we in Jersey have to, I think, build relationships with all sorts of politicians, certainly in the UK, so all stripe of politician, but also more globally as well. And sometimes we get criticised for having those conversations with various partners. I make no apology for that. I think it's important that we have those conversations so that what Jersey does, whether that's be cultural, historic or economic, is understood by those parties with whom we are engaging.
And in terms of, say, the current predicament that the island's faced with, and in particular when we're looking at the UK, the Monetary Policy Committee, I believe they're meeting today. I think it might even be announced.
They have met and there is no change.
No change, okay,
interest
that's to be
rate,
expected. So in terms of you trying to see out the rest of this term in office, I mean, what message does that really send out to businesses in Jersey, and what will be the impact for our island economy?
In regard to?
In terms of when we're looking at the UK situation, in terms of the way how the base rate's been set and how it's been maintained.
So we are in fiscal union, or monetary union, sorry, with the United Kingdom. Sometimes that might be frustrating, as the chair finds it frustrating that we're a sub-sovereign in the way that he's been questioning already this afternoon. But that's what we are. If we are to consider changes to those issues, they are massive changes, and we would have to think very carefully about whether the benefits really outweighed the individual frustrations that we might have in any given case.
In terms of where we are now, Minister, do you think that we will probably see more positive changes by the time that the States Assembly enters the period of PERDA, or do you expect there to be...
in regard to...
Well, in terms of the economy, is there going to be a bit more of an uplift in the economy or not?
Well, the best we can do is look at what the Fiscal Policy Panel, who are the independent experts, forecast is going to happen to Jersey's economy. I don't have those forecasts in front of me. That really would be for another panel there, but they are expecting growth, so we would expect that to happen. We have a whole stream of work in the Financial Services Directorate to try and ensure that not only do we have growth now, but we have growth in the medium and long term as well.
Yep. Thank you. Minister, I think the real question everyone wants to know, and of course we need to make sure you call it the party by its full title, Reform UK, at their conference. When is it, by the way? Is it?
No, it's been.
It's been already, hasn't it? Of course it has. We've seen it. Did you need to bring your own flag to that, or do they provide you with one?
I've never taken my own flag to any of the party conferences that I've attended.
I wonder that maybe you could unfurl a Jersey flag next time you're there and see what the reaction is.
Well, I could if I could find one that said Reform Jersey on it, perhaps, Chair, yes.
We may be able to come to an accommodation for that. Minister, we're going to just turn to some more questions about the relations with the EU. I suppose our immediate neighbour, France. How are you deepening relations with France at a national or regional level? And can you give us any updates about work that's going on with the Bureau des îles Anglo-Normandes regarding trade, transport, fisheries, cultural links, etc.?
Yes, we over the previous quarter have engaged with our French colleagues at regional and national level. Of course, we know that there's been a change again in Paris very recently, and that they are suffering their own economic and political challenges. We will be hosting the Normandy Summit in Jersey later this month. There will be a Brittany Summit in October. Some of my colleague ministers were in Normandy at the beginning of this week, the weekend of this week, visiting the nuclear reprocessing plants there, so working on emergency planning. So all of the issues that you mention are issues that we continue to engage with on a weekly or and monthly basis.
Thank you. I've got a question here which you probably would have got. It might. So I apologise if it's better dealt with as a written question, but in terms of the overseas offices in London, Brussels, Normandy, are you able to provide us a breakdown of staffing numbers, budgets, or if not in great detail, just an overview of how the resources are divided between those? And of course, you can talk to their importance as well, and why we have them.
Oh, well, I think we've just explained the line of questioning that you've had shows why it is important for us to engage, sometimes perhaps even just to differentiate, to ensure that there is an understanding that we are different from the United Kingdom. We may be a sub-sovereign, but we are autonomous in all domestic matters, except as we've considered defence and foreign relations. So it's really important that we have that engagement. So in Bion, we've got a staff of 3, and in the Brussels office, we've got a staff of 4. In the London office, we've got a staff of 4. The total number of staff of the department, including those 11, is, it sounds odd, but it's 31 and a half, because that's full-time equivalents rather than actual staff.
Would there be an expectation that most of those staff would be multilingual?
Well, certainly the 3 in Bion are multilingual. At least
2.
I'm trying to think whether most actually are more multilingual, whether they actually use their language. So we've got in global relations, we've got 2 Spanish speakers, we've got a Portuguese speaker.
French,
We've got
Arabic.
French speakers, we've got Arabic speakers. So I would say majority actually are.
And that's across the
thinking about
department,
it.
not
That's
just
right across.
the overseas
Across the
offices.
department,
Yeah.
Is that a useful resource to have? I mean,
It's very useful, yes.
Absolutely.
pushing on an open door, perhaps, with that question. Minister, could you tell me briefly just about the Brittany Summit? Is that something new? Is that the first time it's going to be
No, it's
hosted?
not.
No.
Perhaps it's the first time that I've not been able to attend, because I will be in New York that week. It's in effect, it replicates what we've done for a long time with Normandy. So we've had a strong relationship with Ille-Vilaine in Brittany for a number of years. I'm trying to think, is it 5 or 6 years roughly?
Ille-Vilaine.
No, with Brittany
Brittany-
itself that we've signed an
That,
agreement.
no, I think that's new, relatively
That-
new,
I
last
know.
couple of years, I think.
That's
But
what I was
11
going
is
to say.
it's more of the
It's
more the
less-
established.
Less than 5 years. I would
yeah.
say about 5 years, but it might be slightly less.
Is that
than
largely
that.
centring around St Malo, or is it to do with St Malo and the ports? Is it to do with the wider?
Well, it's really historically come from that St Malo relationship, but of course, as you know, the offices for Ile Vilaine is in Rennes, and the Parliament for Brittany is in Rennes. So we've been going to Rennes and having that positive engagement. And then we've agreed that actually it would make more sense because things like economic development move from the department to the region. And so we said, look, okay, some of the things that we want to talk about and that they would like to talk about are economic, and yet they're undertaken by a different part of the French government, and that's why we broadened it out those few years ago.
Has anyone got any questions at this point? I'll just ask one more on this line of questioning. It's really to do with moving on to the ETA, so the electronic travel authorisations. Have you got any updates for us on that, and maybe where the questions and the implications are around that? We know we avoided perhaps a maybe longer debate because there was an amendment which got withdrawn. But do you think we're in a positive position with that?
Well, of course, that's something that falls under the responsibility of the Home Affairs Minister. Their states approved the
So in
proposal.
fact, that's the question: is that
the proposal in the states last week? Thankfully, recognising that it's the ETA is a UK system and will be piggybacking off the back of that. So even though I think the amendment was presented with good intentions to ensure that we preserve Jersey's autonomy, and I fully understood that, in this case, this is not a Jersey system, it's a UK system that we will be piggybacking off. So it's as far as I'm aware from the Home Affairs Department, progress is being made.
Yeah.
in terms of the interaction between yourselves and Home Affairs, can you advise what engagement has happened between the UK and EU partners to mitigate impacts on travel, tourism, and businesses that might have an effect on Jersey? And have you had lots of representations from industry about concerns around that?
We have represented Jersey's view for a number of months and years now, certainly in Paris, regionally, and also in Brussels. Whether that's some of the reason that this has taken longer than it might have done, and there's been a continued deferral of the implementation, it's difficult to say, because I don't think we will be the only ones lobbying for a simplification and a deferment. Judgment Day, as it were, is now approaching, and the deferrals have come to an end, and it's now being implemented. Our concerns have always been around the added layer of bureaucracy, although rightly the Home Affairs Minister pointed out that it is about protection at the border, but also been about capacity at the particularly the ports that we would use in France, having sufficient capacity to deal with what will now be the new requirement on the French side, but also capacity on our side, that we have sufficient capacity to deal with it as well. It would seem that it will. I think a fair assessment would be that when it's initially implemented, islanders will find it bureaucratic with the best will in the world, but perhaps the second and third and fourth times that we need such a document, it will become smoother and easier. But initially, on entry into Europe, it won't be at all, because biometrics will need to be taken.
With that in mind, is there any realistic hope that Jersey might, I mean, I know it's a slightly different question than just ETAs now, but in terms of Jersey controlling its own borders, providing maybe having derogations for allowing people to stay longer with a French identity card. Are these realistic possibilities, or is it very much the policy of one step at a time?
As we had a debate recently, as you know, in the States about these particular issues, and the balance that the Home Affairs Minister's got to find is one of being pragmatic with one of ensuring that we've got secure borders. I think the previous Home Affairs Minister managed that balance well. I think the existing Home Affairs Minister is managing that balance well. Some of us would like to see that extended, if at all possible, for the well-articulated reasons. And we will continue to make that case, as we made that case again in Paris and in Brussels, that we believe that we do have the ability to manage our borders in a slightly bespoke way to the way that the UK does. You'll see, however, that from a UK's perspective, it's a very politically charged issue, and even post that debate, UK ministers, UK shadow ministers, should I say, and even some UK ministers were questioning of that ability. But we stand by our ability, we make the case for our ability, and we hope that carefully it can be extended into the future. But again, we've got to be realistic.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson, do you have some questions?
Thank you. Minister, I'd like to come to Pillar 2, if I can. Could you just provide an update for the panel on where Pillar 2 is up to, please?
Well, as you know, the legislation has been through the States. As you also know, that the US continues to want a side-by-side solution, but those conversations continue at the OECD, and as we sit here, it's still not possible to say whether that will or will not happen, or in what way it will happen.
Could you give us some indication as to why there is still some concern about making this happen? What are the barriers to that?
Well, I suppose the barriers obviously are that the US wants its system to be acknowledged as the same and equal to the OECD system, when quite patently it isn't.
And if that were not to be an outcome, or if there was no agreement reached, how do you see the whole sort of environment being as a result of that position being taken by the US?
Well, that's difficult for us to second guess. We know that there's now starting to be some noise from the US Congress that they want to reintroduce the, I think it was 899 clause. That will be not necessarily straightforward, so they'd need to find either a piece of legislation or have a standalone piece of legislation to bring that back as a countermeasure. Of course, the G7 commitment to allowing side-by-side still stands. That's not been overturned. And as I understand it, there is a lot of lobbying and pressure being put on the OECD to allow a side-by-side system. Interestingly, of course, we know that in France, the courts have just said that its digital services tax is appropriate and is constitutional, which will strengthen the French government's view, which is counter to the US view, which is digital services tax are discriminatory and unconstitutional. So I think there's a lot of political will to try and solve some of these issues. The problem is really how that would work in practice from a technical perspective, because we can all see that one system of taxation which is different from another system of taxation there's going to be all sorts of unintended consequences. You can't just miraculously say they're both the same when technically they aren't.
What sort of impact do you think that will have for us?
Well, I think we, on the one hand, certainty for business would be positive, but our system we developed in line with the OECD standard, but in the way that we thought best served Jersey's interest and Jersey's business interests. And so if it's not resolved, the legislation that we've currently got remains in place.
Okay. So can you advise on the projections for the Pillar 2 tax receipts in that scenario, and are they going to be more or less what you're expecting?
Well, you'll know from looking at the budget, and no, actually it was a conversation with the Corporate Services Scrutiny panel, not yourselves, looking at the budget, that because of overall corporate income tax forecast for this year are down slightly, the forecast for the base case Pillar 2 is also down.
Okay, and is that going to affect the position on the strategic reserve or any plans for borrowing at all?
Well, it's affected the amount of allocation for the competitiveness agenda, and it's also affected the allocation that had been intended to go into the stabilisation fund, which now won't be. The element of the allocation which has been protected is the financing of the borrowing for the hospital.
Can I just ask, could you put some numbers around the projections? So what was it what were you anticipating, and what is it actually likely to be?
Well, I don't have those figures in front of me. I think it was 52 and it's gone down to 42, something like that.
So this idea about any excess money going into the strategic reserve was it stabilisation fund? That's academic. That's academic now for this.
Well, it's not proposed in the current budget.
Yeah.
Of course.
And so there's a shortfall from that. How's the shortfall going to be filled?
No, there isn't a shortfall. In that respect, the forecast income is down because of the forecast corporate income tax being down, because don't forget we made a very base case analysis and we said that those who are currently paying at 10 that come into the scope of Pillar 2 will just take what they've currently got, we'll rebase it to 15, and that will be our Pillar 2 number. We haven't factored in any potential upside. So if the forecast for 2025 is reduced as it is, then when you do that rebasing, it reduces as well. So it's not directly connected with Pillar 2.
Right. Okay. Just coming to your budget, are you able to advise us on the priorities within the budget insofar as they extend to external relations?
Well, it's not really changed because the budget is flat, other than the savings allocation that we've got, and as we know,
You had to reprioritise.
The budget number on the departmental line is a budget number without any pay increase allocated. So it's almost the opening number. It will change when the pay agreement is reached and allocated through. Yes, of course, we've had to reprioritise because we've had to take our share of the allocated savings, but we still believe that we can perform our functions within the reduced budget when it comes to external relations.
Could you just give us some detail around what you actually
So our budget
decided
for
to-
2026 will be well, don't forget there's two lots of budget, so this is just external relations, it's not the financial services budget. This year, the budget was 3,498,000, and next year it will be 3,445,000. We've got some efficiency savings, about 52, and we've got a reduction in what we'd previously asked for growth between 25 and 28, and that's 27.
Can you tell us what the 52,000 of efficiencies relates to? Is it
It's our share of the allocation of the needed efficiency.
just a slice that off the
Yeah.
top?
Yeah.
So I will make it via, we made it this year via vacancy management. So when staff leave, you may have a bit of a gap before you reappoint, which generally naturally happens anyway. We have reduced the grant to the Brussels office. We've managed to do that because its status has been reclassified under Belgian law. So that has meant that we've been able to make a saving there. We've reduced the travel budget slightly, and we've looked at required delivery.
So how does the reclassification end up in a saving?
Because it's to do with the tax status of the office.
Right.
So that has been agreed. The Belgian authorities have agreed to that, and that status, I think, lasts for the next 8 years. So.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, we'll no doubt drill down into this more as we get into the budget, but it's obviously dropped, and we're starting to get to grips with it. So,
So just on
Well,
that,
we're hoping we won't need a budget scrutiny hearing because it's really flat, but anyway.
it leads to the question about whether or not if any of those changes that you've just highlighted would actually impact on your department's delivery at all.
Well, I do think that departments should seek to try and deliver efficiencies, and that's what we've done. We're playing our part in doing that where we can. Of course, that does put more pressure on the staff and the department. We'd be wrong to suggest it doesn't, but I think that we will still be able to carry out the broad range of our functions during 2026 in largely the same way that we have done in 2025.
Can I ask, Minister, with the recruitment freeze coming to fruition, has that impacted your department in some shape or form?
Well, I think it's impacted every department. Don't forget that we were only talking about today, we've just talked there about external relations and all those things stand. In the section that Helen heads up, the financial services section, we've got a budget there this year of just over 11 million. Again, we'll have our savings allocated. Helen has managed her budget in such a way through the recruitment freeze and the consultants freeze to allow us to be able to do all of the competitiveness work. So whilst on the one hand it has been more challenging from a staffing perspective, it's also allowed us to do other things that we wouldn't have been able to do had we not followed that model.
Yeah. Minister, can I ask the question that doesn't always get asked in these kind of hearings? We know that the savings programme's been going on for a while, the recruitment freeze, etc. Has that had any impact on staff morale, and have staff had to maybe dig deep in order to? I'm sure they all love turning up to work, but has it been? Have you noticed any signs in terms of staffing?
I suppose that's possibly a difficult question for the Minister to answer. I enjoy turning up for work, and therefore I think everybody else working in my section enjoys it in the same way, and I hope that they do. I think we're extremely fortunate to be working and serving Jersey in these two particular portfolios. I'm not aware that there was anything negative in the Be Heard survey that would indicate that there are difficulties, nor am I aware that, I'm looking at either of you, nor am I aware that there's undue staff sickness arising out of such concerns.
No.
But Kate and Helen can answer for themselves in that regard if you wish.
I mean, no, it wasn't necessarily a negatively framed question, but I mean, is there been a recognition maybe across government that it has been a difficult period perhaps for government in tightening its belt, and that staff have been, going the extra mile in some cases to meet the required savings?
Could I just come in there from an external relations perspective? I know you're asking, Chair, about the broader government, but one of the things we've done is to invest quite heavily in our people and culture offer.
Yeah.
So the wellbeing offer across the department, and I think actually government more broadly has responded as well. You look at things like the staff awards that happen every year as well. So you're actually looking at celebrating commitment and delivery. So I think there is recognition that while on the one hand, obviously we are having to tighten our belts, and maybe that does have an impact on staffing levels and potentially morale. I think there is a lot of work going on to make sure that also staff feel supported and recognised for their efforts, and good work is celebrated as well. So I think that is going on across government, but certainly external relations, that's something I feel very strongly about.
Yeah, good.
Could I just ask a supplementary, just in terms of keeping the workforce happy and whatever, and also trying to hit some of those financial efficiency savings. I was interested in the way that you talked about the fact that this is really just cutting the expenditure on certain things. What kind of transformation is going on within each of the portfolios to drive sustainable efficiencies? Because I think what you've talked to me about, or talked to us about, it doesn't seem it's sustainable. It seems as though it's just to manage a current position. So could you talk to us about that kind of transformational work or approach?
Well, I think it's quite difficult with a small department to think of it in that. Both are very small departments with very few employees. I think it's difficult to necessarily think of it like that. Having said that, the Brussels office is a sustainable change, so that will happen year on year. With staff turnover, I think it's always appropriate to manage that staff turnover and think about if you can do jobs differently, or you can combine roles. Interestingly, that of course is something that we did in the Financial Services Directorate. We took 2 directors, created 1 director, and then created deputy directors underneath, thereby creating a sustainable change in the structure of the department. But I still would say I think that's quite difficult to do in departments where you've got very few people. But we're doing our best at a time.
Okay, I think what we might do is come back to that, because in terms of some of the leadership challenges that each of the departments have got through the budgets is to demonstrate how you can do things differently, and what connection you're making with things like technology developments, those sorts of things, rather than just relying on moving people around.
So we do all of that as well as part of our work programme. So we're happy to answer any follow-up questions that you might have in that regard.
Okay, we're actually going to move on to intellectual property. We're mindful of the Assistant Minister's presence, and we'd like to engage her. Minister, could we
just get leave to come as well?
make any substitutions that you need? So, Deputy Scott, welcome to the panel. I think we last had a briefing via a letter in February this year about the draft trademarks Jersey law and the intellectual property law that's coming forward. Could you provide an update about those 2 laws and where you're at with them?
The 2 laws, sorry, could you just say
so
the 2 laws?
the draft trademarks Jersey law and the draft Register of Intellectual Properties law.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Thank you.
I think when we last were talking about that, we were due to have a consultation on the draft law, so that's taken place. I think there are about 11 responses, or was it 7?
We consulted twice. I think the first consultation had around that number, the second slightly less, but there's been a number of informal approaches that have been taking place as well.
And that's been quite useful because there are it's a very technical area, and there have been some technical changes to the law. If I start talking about things like periods of opposition, you might not know quite what I'm talking about, but basically when you are renewing intellectual property rights, there's a period where people might object. There's been more alignment. We originally were aligned with Guernsey, 20 days to allow people to oppose renewal, and now we're going for 60 days, which is more aligned with the UK, which gives we've actually felt it was better to go for the international best practice and actually and get that balance between being agile whilst actually giving people the right to to exercise those rights.
Could I ask about going back to the consultation? Was it one consultation that you held for both laws together, or were they separate consultations for each law? Are they a package in that sense, or are they?
It was really focused on the trademarks law.
Trademarks,
the
okay, that's fine.
registrar, was a different kettle of fish, really.
That's about the trademark. That's where that's the consultation.
Yeah,
okay.
that's. I don't know if you've seen that draft law, but it's a lot slimmer in terms of. It's basically just providing for the JFSC to be the to actually take over the registry and to administer the main registry for trademarks. So I'm aiming to lodge that on the 14th of October as we just make those final tweaks. I think that another area that was discussed was to do with the transition arrangement. And I've got to say that the officers working on this have worked incredibly hard and done some amazing work, because it involves talking to WIPO, and Lucas might have to tell me what WIPO stands for again.
World Intellectual Property Organization.
Yeah, so what you may recall is that the trademark law is you've got the ability to, or at least people have the ability to register trademarks worldwide through a form, through a protocol that's been set up by the Madrid Treaty and the Nice. Nice
Agreement.
Yeah, you call it the Nice Agreement. It's a stand anyway. Now I've completely lost my thread. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, so
you're talking about the transition.
The transition. So what we've got at the moment is that people, because the UK actually is operating part of that system on its own, that people can have rights that extend to Jersey and they're not on our register. So there's been a fair bit of discussion with WIPO where we've actually found that we can actually get all that content transferred onto the register so that we are aware of them, and we can actually enable those rights to continue as uninterrupted and then be renewed at the time that was originally expected. So that was incredibly technical, but we've made some headway there, which had led, I think, to a bit of a delay of the law from what we've originally intended.
And so just to get back to the purpose of the law of the trademarks is so that it's a one-stop shop, essentially. You register your trademark in Jersey and then it's registered. You just need to do it once.
You've got the ability, so I find it much easier. Just imagine that you get a form and you can tick lots of different countries, and you can do that from here in order to register. But it will facilitate, and I keep saying I'm very much looking forward to people creating more intellectual property here. That
is it going to be positive for the economy? Is it?
Well, it supports an innovative economy. It doesn't do the innovation for people, but if we realise the ambition, and it's a very important ambition, that we create rights, and I know you're very interested in sort of like creative arts and anything, but if you've got something that is created that can be sold, that you want to trademark or patent or whatever, that has a value in itself, and that actually is good for the economy. So it facilitates that, because at the moment if you did design something like a patent here, well, it's a patent, yeah, sorry, a trade, talking about a trademark. If you had an international business, you started it here, you had a trademark, you would have to go to all these different countries to register that trademark because we're not part of the treaty. So very much hoping that Scrutiny will be able to support the extension of that treaty.
And can you advise us what overall model you envisage for the registrar of intellectual property? So what will the powers be, the general approach of the process and the service standards, the fees, etc.?
The general model. You mean like, do you want me to point to something that exists in the island right now and say it's like that?
I mean, you can answer as you wish, but I think that's
Okay.
that's the intention of it. What's it going to look like effectively? What's the
Well,
model
I don't
and
think...
It's the governance of it. How's it going to be governed?
Well,
So the second piece of legislation which the Minister mentioned will set up the new office which will function under the umbrella of the Jersey Financial Services Commission, which holds, of course, various registries in the island, and the law will set out the functions and the powers of the registrar, within which they must operate. It's very much set up in accordance with international best practice, we think, in terms of the powers. The trademarks law is modelled on equivalent UK legislation. What we currently have is the judicial grefт that operates the intellectual property register, but particularly the introduction of a primary system of trademark registration will require a lot more work on the part of the registrar. Therefore, it's not feasible for that to remain with the judicial greft, and that will move to a digital, sophisticated offering within the Jersey Financial Services.
Will you need to be present in Jersey to make an application, or can you apply from anywhere in the world?
It's basically a two-way thing. So if I've got if you've got a German business that wants to protect its trademark in Jersey, it can go to any of the offices in any jurisdiction that's part of the Madrid network. And again, fill in one of these forms and say I want it protected here, there and there, and Jersey may well be on that form. And Jersey will get a part of a fee.
In terms of enforcement, I mean, so people would presumably register the trademark here to get protection for their trademark in Jersey, but how do they make the decision about whether that's worth their while to do?
It comes down to the value that you give to the trademark, and that is pretty subjective. It's a bit like, the goodwill of a business. It's brand recognition. So,
what are the costs for Jersey in terms of enforcement of that then? Because there's an enforcement branch, presumably, that someone's paying for their trademark to be enforced.
I think that's a court matter, really, because you were talking about infringement proceedings at that point.
I mean, is it something that's depending on what it is we're talking about, is it something that trading standards are then empowered to deal with? If it's something as simple as maybe selling a branded T-shirt?
Chair, there is a role for trading standards when it comes to infringing goods entering into the island. But as the Minister rightly points out, if a person believes that someone else is using their mark without authorisation, then that
They
person
take action
can
themselves through the courts.
Private action through the courts.
For breach of trademark, I believe.
It's
Sorry to
evidence.
interrupt.
It's like, property is evidence of a property right. So just as, if you've got a house or something and somebody's breached your rights, you go to court.
Good. Can I just ask, in terms of the timeline then, what's the timeline for bringing these?
So coming back to that, I think, as I've said, I'm aiming to lodge on the 14th of October.
Yep.
The officers would be very happy to give you a briefing on that.
For both of these laws?
Yes, we're going to do them at the same time, given
That would give you enough time to debate it for the last sitting in 2025, is that, or before
we
that?
would be debating in November.
Is it 6 weeks lodging?
The 25th of November, there is the week commencing 25th is a debate that would be subject to other states' business potentially that could be used for the trademarks and registrar law.
Good. Thank you. Any other questions on
Yeah,
that?
could I just ask you, Minister, what sort of engagement have you had with stakeholders on the introduction of the new laws, and have you got any sort of concerns being raised from them at all at this stage as to the transition to this new arrangement?
There's been extensive, well, when I say extensive consultation, I mean, it has, you've got to bear in mind that the people who know about this stuff, in fact, I'm quite amazed how many, intellectual property officers we have in this, but how many have we got? It's about...
There are at least 3 major ones, and then there are probably at least one more boutique one that I know of, but for an island the size of Jersey, that is, there's a substantial industry.
So it's pretty technical, but they very much know their stuff. They know how the systems work and how the international systems work. So we've been really grateful for their input. There haven't been any outliers who've said, we're not happy that you're doing this, and then indeed this is responded to what they're doing.
They know what to expect.
Yeah, I think the main where we've had a bit more discussion, again, it's been relatively straightforward given it's such a small community, but a very important one and potentially fairly valuable one, has just been about how the transition provision should work, because there was initial debate about whether we should just have a period where, or if you like, accelerate the time within which property rights expire so that we could re-register them, but we found a way around that. So I didn't really want people to be saying Jersey's trying to make a buck from us by robbing us of our property rights.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's worth saying, but this the concept, sorry Miles, I'm not close to this, but the whole notion of these registers moving from the GREF to the FSC has been going on for about 10 years.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's been under discussion for 10 years, and if we're eventually going to make it happen, I'm sure that's a good thing.
It's not the most logical place for them, but given that we didn't...
It's been given up willingly, I take it, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, it's been transferred. Just thank you. Well, thanks for that, and we'll look out for the lodging. Thanks. So, Andrews, you've got a different line of questioning.
Yes, moving on to Moneyval now, Minister. I just wanted to know...
Can we just change the cast again?
You can ask the question.
Oh, yes, indeed, yeah.
Thanks.
So moving on to Moneyval, I was wondering, Minister, if you could just give the panel an update from the 2024 Moneyval evaluation report and the list of priorities, and whether any are outstanding, and if so, what work is being done to address those areas?
Yes, I mean, it's an ongoing programme, really. We've, and Helen can speak more about this, but we've internally tasked the actions, or put the actions into 4 thematic areas. So around risk, there's 14 actions, law enforcement, prosecution and financial intelligence, there's 32 actions, terrorist financing and proliferation financing, there were 12 actions, and regulation and supervision, there were 23 actions. The most notable, so all the actions are underway and we're tracking them there. The most notable actions are, as you'll have seen, the proliferation financing risk assessment was recently published, offering jurisdictional specific analysis of threats and vulnerabilities. We've issued a typology report on dual use goods. The JFSC has done a consultation paper on enhanced criminal background checks for key regulated individuals in key regulated roles, and the FIU relocation and change is ongoing. Helen, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to
No, I think as the Minister said, this is really embedded in business as usual for the Directorate now, and bringing together both sides of the financial services and financial crime portfolio means that we can just continue to deliver on these actions. The financial crime regime is hugely important to our reputation as an IFC, so it's not something we're going to take our eye off the ball.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to also ask, Minister, obviously this covers several departments, and I just wanted to know what discussions are taking place with other ministers and other officers in other departments.
So we put in place, prior to the assessment, what you call a national structure, which is a political steering group, is it's called, where all ministers and relevant officials come together so that the decisions are made collegiately in a joined up way rather than it just being driven by one individual aspect.
Yeah.
And that meets, when did it met last month, I think?
Yeah. The next one's November, I believe, but the agencies are talking on a daily basis. We held a all agency away days to bringing together our department, external relations and sanctions,
Yep.
the police, FIU, JFSC, any others that I may have forgotten, in July, just to make sure that everyone's being held accountable and answering to each other
Yeah.
on where we are and those actions that need to be delivered.
Yeah. And also, what about the regulator? What role are they still playing in this? And also, do you get feedback from industry in terms of the way how things are progressing as well?
So they're involved in this structure, but
Yeah, so we've actually just developed very recently a new reporting framework. All agencies have access to that and can directly update the actions that were allocated to that agency. So it's in kind of the initial testing phases, but that's perhaps something we can talk you through next time or when we next meet privately.
Oh, okay. And could I just ask, so who is managing that function?
So that's that with me. I'm heading up
Okay,
the overall team, and we've got a
team.
head of delegations and Moneyval as well.
Okay, so I guess in a way it's about trying to draw upon everybody to have an interdependent approach moving forward.
Yeah, and I
Yep.
think the relationships now, having gone through the very recent assessment, are in a great place so that everyone knows who the key players are and that this is really important for Jersey as an IFC. So everyone's on the same page, everyone's willing and putting in the work and knows what actions are on their kind of to-do list.
Yeah, and Minister, for you, I mean, what are your main priorities with everything that is outstanding that ought to be finalised before the period of PERDA?
Well, I suppose making progress on FIU. I think everything else is making progress well. So I think that's one thing that we would like to see additional progress made on between now and the election.
Okay, thank you, Minister. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Wilson, you've got some other questions?
Yes, please. Minister, if I could just turn to the competitiveness programme. Could you provide us with an update on the work being undertaken as part of the Financial Services Competitiveness Programme?
Yes, I can, but perhaps maybe as you know, there are 4 work streams. One which involves international tax, one which was quick wins that we've used Morons for, one which is more of a strategic, a medium and long-term strategic approach, which is using McKinsey's, and then finally Wise Heads piece of work, which will bring all of that together and produce something which can be published. But Helen, I don't know if you want to, because Helen's involved in all of them, but leading on to.
Yeah, and I think the kind of second work stream is definitely the most progressed at the moment. The sound business practice policy has been revised and was signed off just last week, or earlier this week actually, by the committee. So we'll just have some final engagement with industry on that to make sure we've captured all their points before publishing. You'll have seen our control of borrowing framework consultation's gone live. That runs until the end of this month. We've hosted a number of drop-in sessions as well during that consultation period and had some really good engagement of an industry working group to work through some of the detail. It's quite a technical piece and it touches all kinds of areas. So as we kind of unravel that, we want to make sure that we've got the right oversight in the right places still, but in a much more efficient way for the island. Schedule 2 is one of the challenging areas for industry. So now that we've done the data collection exercise that we needed to do to be able to risk assess some of those activities within Schedule 2, the money laundering order, we're starting to assess whether there are low risk activities within that don't need to be within that full regime anymore, to again alleviate some of that burden on areas of the industry and the general public as well. So our the private or the domestic lending exemption order that was made very recently was very much focused on the domestic market and local people. We're looking at the reliance regime, so there's kind of two elements to that. There's a legislative element about how regulated businesses can rely on the CDD that's been done by other regulated businesses and how we can make that work in practice, because there's not been as much uptake as we'd have hoped. But also, is there a wider digital solution that will drive efficiency for the industry? And then finally, we're looking at beneficial ownership thresholds. So at the moment, on incorporation of an entity, we collect at a much lower threshold than we do on an ongoing basis. So we're just looking to see if we can align that to take away the kind of differentiator.
What's the threshold, do you know?
10% on incorporation and then 25% on an ongoing basis. Internationally, the standard seems to be at 25%. So if we can just raise that, it may, again, alleviate some pressure for the industry.
Is there any downside to that? Is there any risk?
So we're working through a bit of a risk assessment at the moment, and we'll bring that to the Financial Crime Political Steering Group for their ultimate determination as to whether it's something we can tolerate as a risk for the jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm. In terms of the work that you're doing around some of the funds, can you give us some more detail on the Jersey Private Fund?
Yeah, so as of the 6th of August, is it? Yes. Yeah, 6th of August. We had refreshed the Jersey Private Fund offering, so this was a really popular vehicle choice for the jurisdiction. We'd seen other jurisdictions make similar changes, and we just wanted to make sure that we remain competitive. So that's removing the cap on the investor numbers, enhancing the time within which the authorisations are turned around by the regulator, and there's one other thing. Aligning the definition of professional investors, so just broadening that so more people could access this, but still keeping it, a safe, reasonable framework. So it's been well received by industry. We're hearing positive feedback that it still remains an attractive product, but there's a whole host of work more generally around competitiveness, and probably the longer term third work stream will pick up some of this funds work as well.
Okay, thank you.
You talked about the turnaround time there for the regulators. Is that something the regulators are on board with? Do they think
Absolutely.
they can?
I think this was a real example of government, industry and regulator coming together to make real enhancements that everyone could get on board with to a popular product for the jurisdiction.
Okay.
Does that have any impact on the sort of sound business practice policy that you're developing at all?
It may do. So same business practice policy looks at particular activities. So, for example, until recently, digital assets were in there. We've actually developed other guidance and regimes for digital assets, so it no longer needs to be in there. You might see funds investing in that class of assets. But on the whole, the JPF is probably caught more by the control of borrowing framework at the moment. So that's something we really need to pick up to make sure that we don't create a more burdensome regime as we remove the control of borrowing framework.
Okay.
Sorry,
No.
I was just going to ask, as an overall theme, how do you balance the requirement for the time that it takes to do due diligence with the risk of actually speeding things up and maybe not allowing enough time, and therefore the risk?
So the due diligence is undertaken by the regulated entity rather than the JFSC, so all of that should have been undertaken before the application's made to authorise.
So is some of this about reducing duplication? Are there elements of that?
Not necessarily with the JPF stuff, but the wider CDD work where we'll look at the money laundering order. At the moment, what you find is CDD is required to be done by every regulated entity, and most businesses coming to Jersey will interact with more than one regulated entity. So they will have a trust company, they will have a lawyer, they'll have an accountant, and there is replication of some of that CDD. We're just trying to work through how we can make sure that
Remind us of CDD.
Customer due diligence. Yeah. So just to make sure that the right level of understanding is there of the person that you're dealing with without having to duplicate. So it's a balance, you're right.
Okay, and just finally, could you tell us about the work that you're doing, or the panel is doing, that is relating to the Financial Services Competitiveness Programme, particularly around Jersey Finance and Jersey Financial Services Commission. How is that working?
I'm going to take that. Thank you. This will form part of Workstream 3, so it's no secret, I don't think, that we've appointed McKinsey to support us with this work. They hit the ground running in July and have had a whole host of engagement both on island and with off-island decision makers who might use Jersey for their business. They have produced a very early draft of the report, and we're testing some of those ideas at the moment. As part of that consideration, they will be looking at not just Jersey Finance and the role of the regulator, but also the government function as well, and how we act collectively, I expect, as a jurisdiction to ensure that we're getting the right levels of work and we've got the opportunities for growth.
Is this going to be incorporated into your next financial services update in terms of some of the outputs of that?
Yeah,
do you have some idea of what you might share in that update?
So at the moment we've got a rough agenda that's circulating between us, Jersey Finance, and the Commission. We're looking at McKinsey coming to do an update for us, although we've not actually defined what that looks like, because this is only the third work stream of 4, so we won't have fully concluded that work till next year. The JFSC want to use the opportunity to do a bit of an update on their strategy, and we'll do some more deep dive into the kind of second work stream and the tax piece that Cora and her team are leading on. So the date's in the diary for the 24th of November in the afternoon.
And just for clarity, is these 2 work streams are critical in order for you to progress to the other 2 work streams? Is that right? There's a sequential process here.
The second work stream that I'm mostly focused on at the moment is really about kind of clearing the deck so that we've got the best possible platform to launch that growth that should come out of work stream 3 and ultimately 4. The international tax strategy as well will feed into work stream 4. So 2 is well underway, and I'm confident that we'll deliver on those elements that have been brought to our attention so far, and then everything else is on track at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Minister, I'd like to use the last few minutes, if that's okay, to talk about the crypto asset reporting framework. So I don't know if you need to rearrange your
Yes, please.
team. Sorry for people who have not been utilised to their full capacity.
Well, I think everybody's been utilised, actually, even if some quietly in the background have been shouting forward.
Indeed. Minister, can you just give us a brief explanation of what the crypto asset reporting framework is, what the interest is from the OECD in it, and why we're involved, what our involvement is?
I suppose why we're involved is a good question, but it's an evolving international standard, so that's ultimately why we're involved. It's a framework which has been developed by the OECD. The G20 asked them to do it, and it's about forming a reporting or exchange of information process for, in effect, crypto assets that wouldn't have fallen into the existing reporting framework, which is CRS. And that's it basically in a nutshell. We don't actually have very many structures that it would currently apply to, but there's obviously between jurisdictions there's a lot of information that flows between jurisdictions, so that those jurisdictions can understand what's happening in or out of
Is this about
other jurisdictions.
Is this anti-money laundering, or is it to do with tax? Is it to do with all of those things?
Well, it's mostly thinking about whether it's appropriately taxed, isn't it?
Yeah. And so when we talk about crypto, I mean, we don't have wealth taxes in Jersey, but other countries may have. Is that the issue? And so they want to know whether people are holding assets in crypto that they need to be declaring, or is it something more than that?
Well, these whole frameworks are exchanging information. So you would expect that we have the information in regard to a Jersey structure that might have investors from another country. Those another countries may have obligations to report on their tax return, for example, to their home jurisdiction. And so it's just that flow of information so that both sides can see that actually it's being reported appropriately.
If I might add as well, sorry, apologies, Minister. I mean, I think it runs across the range of taxes, from income taxes to capital gains taxes to wealth taxes and in some cases inheritance taxes as well. So it depends very much on the structure of the jurisdiction of the investor.
Yeah. Is there an issue with the very nature of crypto is that, you know, people can have crypto secretly, of course, and you could say that they can have the same with other types of money, but there seems to be, is the use of crypto difficult to police in a way that ordinary money, should we say, isn't as easy?
No, because this is about structures. See, we've got to remind, I mean, of course, so firstly, all of this is evolving when it comes to crypto and how it's held and funds and all of those things, which is separate from this, of course, because this is a tax reporting framework. That you as an individual can hold crypto that doesn't come within any ambit of any regulation anyway. But then you can have a fund that might hold crypto or might have its own. What's the DA? Oh, so Julie, this might be your moment. The decentralised exchange thing, and some of those are within recognised pools where there is appropriate regulation, and then you're moving away to others where perhaps there's no regulation in the pool of who comes in and out of the particular fund. Yeah. So it's very much an evolving landscape, but this is about those structures. Is not about you as an individual living in Jersey and us sending information to where you were at university because you happen to have some crypto.
So,
sorry if it's helpful, just by way of additional, I think, because the reporting obligation falls on the service providers, so those businesses that help customers to make transactions in crypto assets. And so in Jersey, they will either be regulated as virtual asset service providers, or they will be financial services businesses, and therefore they're already subject to anti-money laundering obligations. I think that's something that certainly gives me comfort as we're designing this, that we don't have to write into the law how to identify beneficial owners, because we have a robust framework in place.
And in terms of the consultation, could you, so we understand it ran from November last year to February earlier this year. Can you tell us what some of the themes were and what the engagement was like in that process?
Sure. So we got 11 responses in total to the consultation that went across a range of financial services companies, to advisors, to industry representative bodies, as well as service providers. So we felt that it was that 11 responses was quite a good range across the group. It covered 3 separate amendments. So one was the introduction of legislation to implement the CARF, the Crypto Asset Reporting Framework. One which was about implementation of amendments approved by the OECD to the existing common reporting standard. And then the third was to look at potential administrative improvements to the operation of the tax reporting framework generally. I think, not surprisingly, the majority of responses were about the existing framework. We got a lot of responses about penalties, which we expected to get, and that was very useful feedback. I think in terms of the proposals, in terms of the way we have proposed to implement the CARF and the amendments to the CRS business, made very few comments. I think they generally welcomed the fact that we're building on existing frameworks and quite predictable legislation that has already been in place. There were some requests for guidance, which we will be addressing. I think in one case we've had to refer that request back up to the OECD because it's to do with the interpretation of the standard as opposed to something that we can opine on here. But in terms of that, it was quite positive.
Does this increase any regulatory burden on those who are trading in crypto?
So it is an additional reporting obligation on businesses that assist other people to trade, but it builds on existing client due diligence. So there's additional client due diligence that needs to be done because they now need to identify the tax jurisdictions of tax residents and the taxpayer information numbers of their clients, which they haven't had to do before. And they will have to make reports to Revenue Jersey on an annual basis from 2027. So yes, it is an additional.
But it's only mirroring what they would be doing for other types of investment.
The intention is to, the OECD very much based this around the existing common reporting standard, and although some of the information is slightly different because it's a different asset class, it's quite a familiar pathway, I think, to businesses.
Okay, and when can we, what's the next step in this that we can expect as a panel in terms of legislation or the next steps?
The draft legislation have you issued that yet for targeted consultation, which is this month, next month?
It will be issued in the next week or two for targeted consultation, and our intention is to lodge it in the second half of October for debate at the end of the year.
Thank you, we look forward to that. Now, I don't know if it's going too far to ask about it, it's related, but crypto, is there any conversations going on in government as to whether government should hold its own crypto assets?
You can say. I'm going to answer the question, but if we want
Final substitute.
So I am not aware of those conversations if they are going on. I don't know if you
Nor
are.
am I.
No.
No.
Are there any? What's the thinking more widely? I mean, feel free to bring in your officers, but is there? I've had people ask me about whether why government isn't doing this.
So that's a good question, because we are just focusing on within the Financial Services Directorate, we're just focusing on from an industry perspective and what it means and how what structures should or shouldn't be in Jersey, because from a risk perspective and a supervisory perspective. So we are thinking about that. I have not personally been involved in any conversations in regard to government holding crypto, but then I'm not directly, I couldn't give you here without notice a direct answer to all of the investment pools within the Common Investment Fund as it stands, and all of the investment funds, because some may be holding crypto assets. I can't answer that question
I
directly.
don't remember having discussed it. But I mean, obviously we're advised by the Treasury Advisory Panel.
Yeah.
And then they help us appoint
Is it on their
professional
radar?
investment managers. I guess it will come down to, I suspect what it really comes down to is what the risk objective is, what your risk appetite, risk profile is. Yeah. And, I'd say for a government to put £3 million into crypto assets and find the following day that they're worth zero, even though that may actually be a very small amount loss in terms of the overall performance of the fund, it would be very controversial. So I think, but I haven't been involved. I'm like Deputy Gorst. There could be a fund which has a small amount of crypto tucked away, but those are all invested in line with objectives and policy by the investment managers and reported on in due course.
And is it?
Anyway.
Yeah. Is it something that you'd consider raising at some point at council, looking at what other countries are doing in terms of their diversification of assets?
It's not an issue that would need to be raised at Council of Ministers. I think it would be an issue that the Minister
Treasury
would take
Advisory
back to
Panel.
her,
I mean, it's a very
her
expert
department
field.
and have a conversation with the advisory panel.
But I think there is a difference between whether the government just holds some assets in crypto and whether it actually sets up its own fund, and whether, to what extent it really backs the idea of crypto.
With the greatest respect, Chair, you're starting to sound Trumpian.
No, I'm just putting questions which I know some members, if we're regulating crypto, it's because people are investing heavily in crypto, businesses are diversifying into it, and I'm just wondering at what point that's on the radar. Where is it? Are we just a? I think these are the questions people in
businesses can choose to do what they want with their money, but we are effectively investing public funds, and I think until such time as we feel crypto is more
No, we get
more
it.
of a known core
But these are
quantity.
taxpayers asking, it's talking about investing their money, so I'm just asking the question.
Oh,
That's
their
all. I've
money, yes.
asked the
Well,
question.
that, as I say, we can all decide what to do, and there are. It is a very volatile area.
So I do think the question about whether our existing funds are whether we're considering crypto, I think is a legitimate question which we can take away. I think the question about the government creating its own crypto fund is a much more complicated and difficult question to answer, because it's not something that the government has itself got into previously in regard to really any investments like that. It would be make much more sense for it to be through the SIF rather than the government creating that fund, because actually I can't see that there would be fundamentally a need for the government to create a fund when there's so much private provision of funds that islanders could invest in.
Thank you. Any other questions?
No, not from me. No.
Right, Minister, thank you and your team for coming and answering our questions, and we look forward to seeing you in the next when we next